Las olas vienen y golpean tu barca. El viento del huracán desvía tu navegar. Cuando la luz del faro no se alcanza a mirar, recuerda, marinero, quién es tu capitán. Si estás en alta mar y has perdido tu rumbo, la consulta sin poder acertar. Piensas que no podrás llegar al puerto seguro. Quizás te has olvidado quién es tu capitán, tu capitán, tu capitán. Confía, marinero, dale a él el timón. Él guardará tu vida y toda tu embarcación. Los vientos cesarán cuando escuchen su voz. Tu capitán marinero es Jesús el Señor. Recuérdalo, recuérdalo.
Hello and welcome to another episode of A Candid Conversation with Adam Lopez. I am your host, Adam, and today I have a very, very special guest. He's not only my uncle, blood relative, but it's a pleasure and honor to have Oscar Medina as a guest on this show. And before I introduce Oscar formally, I want to mention this about him. He is a son of migrant parents, Martin and Maria Medina. He's a singer, composer, producer, leadership advisor, and friend to all. He has 10 recordings to his record, more than 200 songs written. He's 59 years old. Of those 59 years, he has 46 serving God and 41 years singing. He has traveled through Latin America, through Spain, Europe, more than 1.5 million followers on his social media platform, and more than 1.5 billion views of his videos on YouTube and other digital platforms. He has survived a few cancers. He has medical conditions that he's going to share about, but he wants to share this. In the midst of it all, God has made him victorious. And in the midst of everything and in everything, he is thanking God and thanks God for his life. Oscar, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Adam. I'm very honored, muy honrado de estar aquí contigo. Thank you so much for this invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, on this program, I have had professionals, advisors, experts in many fields, in many different industries, and you're the first guest from the entertainment, sorry. And it is a pleasure to speak to you today because there is a lot to discuss as far as the challenges that this pandemic has brought. The challenges of going from CD, cassette, even from 8-tracks now to all digital platforms, you know, and how you've been very consistent in the music ministry, in the music industry as well. But before that, and I'm going to say uncle because it's out of respect because that's who you are to me and I admire you. But I want to start, before we go into diving deep into your singing career and your, medical situations and beating cancer, I want to talk about your upbringing, your history, migrant parents from Mexicali and having to come over here. Talk to us about number one, how was it being a child of migrant parents, immigrants, and two, how do you feel now seeing everything you've accomplished and going back and seeing back your upbringing of what they instilled in you as a child?
Oh, I love that question. I had a very, very, very happy childhood, even though we were a somewhat poor family with very little resources financially and in every other way. But we were so free in Mexico, in Mexicali, to play whatever we wanted. We're allowed to be creative in so many ways. We were chased out of the house when there was nothing to do in the house. So literally, we were forced to go out and play and be creative. We had two dogs that were also just as creative as we were to invent games with, and so it was a very happy childhood. There are, of course, problems with it all, but like the fact that I was in danger of drowning in a water canal and things like that. That just happened. We survived it all, but again, it was a very happy childhood. There was so much creativity to be had and to be learned. So many games, so many songs to sing, and it was all done by us. It wasn't done by a gadget. But then one day, Dad decides to bring us to the U.S. He was trying to help us develop a career in the music industry in Mexico. He couldn't. He did what was the best possible thing to do for the whole family. So he brings us to the U.S. in 1975. Brings us to the city of Soledad, Rancho Campora. Very, very little apartment, much smaller than the house that we actually had in Mexicali. But he had a vision. He had a vision for us all. He knew this was the country of opportunity. He knew this was the country where he could send us to school and we could learn and we could make it happen for us, even if he couldn't anymore. Wow. I'm sure he could, but being that he had no formal education and he didn't really have a corporate career, I'm sure he felt like, maybe I might not be able to. So he chose to bring us over and kind of prepared the way for us to develop our lives in the U.S., in the country of opportunities. Really, that's what it was for him. That's what it meant for him, and that's what it was for each one of his children.
Wow. Well, your dad, who's my grandfather, was a hardworking man in Kansas City, California, spent most of his career, and my grandfather, your dad, uncle, he said something to me one day when I was 15 years old in his house on 7th Street in Soledad. He sat me in his kitchen table and he tells me, of course, in Spanish, it seems more valuable what they tell you, but I'm going to translate it. He told me, mijo, me and your grandmother, we have a very good concept of you. We know that you're going to achieve greatness in this world. We don't know what that means, but we just see that light in you. And that always stuck with me. And I'm not here to talk about me, but the things I've accomplished. And that always takes me back to what he said about me when I was 15. I am now 43, and it still sticks to my mind. I want to ask you, Uncle, what is the one piece of advice?
Because words matter. Words matter.
Words matter.
Words that come from the grandparents and words that come from the parents, they matter a lot.
Yeah, they stick. They stick and they stay embedded, engraved in your heart and your mind. But I wanted to ask you, what is that one piece of advice? I know he gave you a lot, but what is that one piece of advice that you say till this day, I remember it? Maybe I didn't understand it then, but oh man, it makes sense now.
He wasn't a man of many words. I saw his actions, and this is what I learned from him. And he did have some advice, but I think my greatest advice that I learned from him is what I saw in him. And this is what he did in life. Every step he took a step up, never down. Every decision he made took him a step higher. And when he decided to come to the U.S., to bring us to the U.S., even though we were going to have less in the beginning, he understood that we would have more in the future if we studied, if we worked hard, if we followed our hearts, if we stuck with the principles. He knew it. He somehow knew it. And so when he decided to bring us over, even though to my eyes as a young kid, 13 years old, this is a smaller house. This doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense to me. But it made sense to him that we were going to have less in the beginning, but with hard work and consistency, education, we were going to have it we were going to have whatever it was that we worked for.
At the end, you were going to have more, you know.
And he made it clear.
Yeah.
While I work here, you're all going to study. That's what he said to us, and there was no choice.
Yeah. That is amazing. I think we can, you know, spend an entire episode just talking about Grandpa and the way he brought his children. And I know, talking about children, why don't you tell our audience how many siblings do you have?
Well, let's see. I'm the 10th of 13, and from what I remember, just before we came to the U.S., there was still Gilbert, Enrique, Martin, Patty, Elvia, and myself and David. So there were still 7 of us in the family. And let it be said, we got here illegally, and with time we became legal, and then eventually we became U.S. citizens. And each one of us learned to work hard and to find success. And we have found it.
13 siblings, and I must say that my mother still tells me of how she had the privilege of changing your diapers and watching over you, and you know, the mischief and the shenanigans that you guys would do with my uncle. So again, it can be an entire whole different episode. But all right, now a segue into, let's fast forward, Uncle, 41 years later. You have now celebrated 41 years of your career as a singer, and not only as a singer-songwriter. I was going to go into that, a composer. You know, and there's no doubt that, you know, your songs have reached millions of people by, obviously, now the digital platform, the digital, you know, era that we live in. But my first question to you is this: you know, where does your inspiration come from? We know that obviously you're a Christian singer. The source of inspiration, passion is God, but is there life experiences? Is it your personal relationship with God? What is it that drives that passion on the inspiration for your 200 plus songs, your compositions that you have written?
I think it all starts in Mexicali. I saw my parents work hard. We lacked, but when you're a child, you don't really feel like you're lacking, because your parents provide.
Wow.
But you see how hard they work. And I saw my dad come home at 7 at night with his boots all wet and all muddy, and then he would literally put them into the oven of the stove to get them dried, because he needed to put them on again at 4:30 in the morning. And so the lacking, it didn't hit me so hard as much as seeing him work so hard. You know, you kind of feel sad at the moment. You feel like, you know, maybe it's too hard for him. You don't really understand. I remember waking up like 4:30, 5 in the morning. When they would wake up, mom and dad would wake up. Hacían las tortillas de harina. They would make the flour tortillas. If I happened to wake up, and I don't know whether this was the experience of the rest of my siblings, but I remember waking up and listening to La Rancherita, La Grande de Mexicali. And then mom and dad would be singing in the morning, and then dad would start singing the song, and then mom would join in with harmony. To me, that's what started the whole thing in me. Wow. Music was a loving thing. Music was part of a partnership. Music was part of that waking up in the morning, and so it was beautiful. I didn't always wake up at that time in the morning, but when I did, and I would notice that, that's how it started in my life. And so time went by. The gospel comes in to be known, comes to the family. Our mother gives her life to Christ. She follows Jesus' steps, and then the rest of the family kind of joins in years later. That brought a huge change to our life, because dad also decided to follow Christ. And then we were a whole family united, now serving God. I learned how to play all my instruments in the church. I started playing there at 15 years old, and I learned the piano, the bass, the drums, the guitar. And then I would learn every song that there was to be sung in the church. And so that got me started in music. And then it started that creativity in me. I would play gospel, black gospel. I would play anything in English, and I would play anything in Spanish. And then I would kind of mess around with Spanish speaking songs and kind of give it a new sound in the piano, since I was doing a lot of piano. And that's how I started. But when I started writing songs, here's the thing that happened to me. I was already here for 5 years. I was doing really great in my expository writing in English. And then I remember graduating, and I got an A in my expository writing class. The teacher told me, you're going to be a great writer if you choose to follow this career. And then I write my first song, and it comes out in Spanish. Completely in Spanish, in perfect Spanish, in perfect rhyme in Spanish, sentences in Spanish, in perfect structure in Spanish. I didn't know how to write songs. Nobody taught me how to write songs. Yeah. But why did it come out in Spanish? I don't get it. Never really understood. Because I loved writing in English. I was on my way to go to college and follow a writing career, and then all of a sudden, something happened, and somebody said, "You're not. It's not that way. It's this way."
This way.
I wrote more than 200 songs, and they're all in Spanish, and I've written 2 songs in English. Now, where does that come from? It comes from having been a child of a family who lacked resources. It also comes from that relationship that I saw between mom and dad.
Yeah.
You know, always singing and somebody else harmonizing. It comes from having seen them try to develop those a career in your mom's case.
Yeah.
Your mom, my sister, her sister Michelle, my sisters. It comes from everything that I saw in my childhood, everything that I went through in my childhood. It also comes from that conversion that happened when I was 13 years old, and I gave my life to Christ. And he does bring a lot of solutions, not just to the family, but also to my personal life. I was a smoker. I was a smoker. By 13, I was already smoking 10 cigarettes a day when I could. You know, whatever I could and wherever I could grab a cigarette, I would smoke. I was only 13 years old, and I was already enjoying the drinking. Yeah. At 13, you know where I would have ended up in my future life. Yeah. And so Christ made this huge change in my life, and that message also became a part of the inner me. And then I went through high school, a totally new culture, but I was totally embraced and loved by parents, and loved by the community, and loved by my teachers. And so that was also a part of who I was becoming. And then all of a sudden, I started writing songs at 18 years old. With time, I started traveling throughout all of Latin America. And that in itself added a whole new perspective and a whole new message to my songs. You can tell the difference from the first songs that I write to the songs that I would come to write later on after all my travels. You can tell the difference.
Man, that is amazing. We never know. We know the singer, we know the actor, we know the actress, we know the composer, the director, but we never know, right, their upbringing. We never know what fuels that passion, that inspiration to do what they do. And this is an amazing story that you're sharing. And because we're limited in time, I want to make mention of this. Uncle, in our family, we have some of the greatest musicians and singers that are out there.
Yep.
And to think that they are self-taught, to think that they didn't go to school, to think that they didn't go get professional, courses or seminars. Only my Uncle David, which is your younger brother, he went to it.
And we didn't have any professional friends to help us out either.
So to think that and consider that, and now to see the platform that everybody has achieved, What does that tell you of not only the instruction and the guidance of my grandpa and my grandmother, but to know that you had 13 siblings who they're all musically inclined? You mentioned my mother, who at the age of 12, 13, 14, 15 were singing in Mexicali, were known. They were local celebrities in Mexicali,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
And even
That's right.
even my uncles at a small age, there's pictures where you guys are holding guitars. All of you were musically inclined since you were small, and never professionally, certified or taught or giving classes. It was all at home. It was organically grown at home.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you? What does that make you think?
Well, look, it was all planted in us within the home.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say this in Spanish because it's easier for me to say it in Spanish.
Yep.
Instruye al niño en tu carrera, en su carrera, y cuando fuere viejo, no se olvidará de ella.
Correct.
Dad was poor, didn't have a whole lot of money, but when he had money, he bought us the necessary tools for us to do something with them.
Mm.
He kept us busy at something we liked. We didn't really know that we're going to come to love it and that it was going to become our career in the future, but he kept us busy with something that was instructional. My brother Nick, who is the oldest, was teaching Gilbert.
Yeah.
I learned watching my brother Nick teaching Gilbert. I would just grab the guitar after they finished, and then I would just practice what I saw them teaching each other, and I learned. And so it was a great thing what he did with this very little money that he had. He invested it in something that was powerful for us.
Wow.
We were little. So instruye al niño su carrera. Give him instruction as he is little.
Mm-hmm.
Y cuando fuere viejo, and when he becomes old, no se apartará de ella. He will not depart from it. Mm. And it became so true in our lives. And this very little investment that he made became the tools that we needed to become successful in life. And so all the other things that we were known and that we became known, that's just besides the point. That's just what comes with the territory. But it all starts with someone planting a seed or someone giving you a tool that you can use to do something with it. Jesus gave the kid, or actually the kid gave Jesus 5 fishes and he multiplied them and he fed the people. Wow. And Dad gave us guitars and we learned to play them and we learned to sing with them. And then later on, we learned to write with them. And then eventually they became our tools to develop our professions. Wow. I went to college for 3 months. And in 3 months, I had just released my recording. So I went into college in September and my recording got released in September. In 3 months, I was so busy going around singing that I had to make a decision. Yeah. I decided to stick with my profession. I decided to stick with my calling. And here I am, 41 years later, the happiest man because I made the best possible decision at that time. They're not easy to make at the time. Yeah. But here I am 41 years later, knowing that it was the best decision to make.
That is amazing. And it didn't stop there, Uncle, with you and my uncles and my mom. Look at my cousins. Look, I have cousins who are amazing singers, amazing musicians.
Incredible,
right? And we have a family group text, right? Through all of us. There's a lot of us on that group text. And remember what I put on that group text maybe a week ago, where I said, it's interesting and it's exciting and amazing to know that each one of us is singing, ministering, having a part in blessing the congregation in different parts of the world. You were, I believe, in Guatemala or Mexico. My uncle was in Guatemala. I have other uncles who were in Puerto Vallarta, in Vegas.
That's right, yeah.
And there's not that many family, Uncle, that can say that. There's not many families that can say we have 8 pastors in our family. We have 5 worship leaders. We have 5 Christian artists. I mean, our family is blessed, and it's amazing to see that. And this is a segue to the next question. And I'm going to set the foundation to my next question is this. When you first started, it wasn't you as as a soloist singer, it was a group of six. And then, you
Right.
ministered, then you went as a soloist, and then my Uncle Gilbert went as a soloist. But this is my question to you. What does it feel to you now that 41 years later, you get to share the platform with the Grupo Medina, con Gilberto Medina, con Oscar Medina, and you get to bless the congregation wherever we go? Because we've had a number of family concerts, and it's
That's
just
right. That's right.
amazing. So how does that make you feel, knowing that
And
I'm sharing this platform?
and we have gone back to Mexicali to do
Correct.
these concerts. So
Yeah.
and to me that's important to mention
Yeah.
because we never forget our roots and we never forget where we came out of.
Absolutely.
And if we're going to bless the whole rest of the world and we don't bless the land that we were born in and we grew up in, then there's I'm not saying it's a bad thing,
Mm.
but it's best.
Yeah.
It's the best thing is to come back and to give a little to a land that gave you so much. Also, as we were growing up in
Yeah.
Mexico, and when you mentioned about singing together as a family, um, I look at it through the eyes of the people that are looking at us, and I've heard the testimonies, and I've heard what they saw, and I've heard what they felt watching a whole family working together, singing together, and just presenting one single message together.
Mm.
In one of the concerts that we did in La Colonia Lamitos in Mexicali,
Mm.
I had some friends of mine from secundaria
Wow.
come over and say, one of them said, I knew you were going to be famous. I knew you were because you sang so beautiful,
Yeah.
and it's so great to hear that, and it just impacted my heart so much to have that coming from this friend of mine from. It was actually, yeah, primaria y secundaria is
Wow,
where
that's amazing.
she was a part of my life too. So we are impacting lives. We're impacting lives, much like our lives were impacted
Yeah.
by that the church, the Church of God that was there near our home. There was that group of English-speaking Americans that would
Mm.
come to our colonia and they would share the love of Christ, and they never shied away from hugging us, loving
Wow.
us, playing with us, even though we were so messy and we were so dirty and we were
Mm.
so sweaty. They still showed us love. It's not just about the home. In this case, the community also has something to do with it, and not
Wow.
just the community. In our case, there were strangers
Mm.
coming from cities far away, but they were carrying a message of love, of peace, of unity, of look, I'm not any better than you, and I can see you, and yes, you are dirty, and yes, you are
Mm.
not so well behaved, but come over here, let me hug you,
Yeah.
let me hug you, and they would sit there with us, and it made such a difference in our lives.
Yeah.
All of us were
Mm.
impacted as kids by the love of this group of Americans that would come from Martinez, California, from a
Wow.
Baptist church, and they would dedicate their time. And they must have come over for, in that I remember, for at least 4 years. And then after that, I remember hearing the stories of them continuing to come over and just sowing a seed of
Wow.
love in people's hearts. And so it isn't just us.
Yeah.
It's everyone who invested themselves in
Absolutely.
us. The love of Christ, the love of God, the love of dad, the love of mom, the love of brother and sister,
Yeah.
the love of La Hermana Maria, our neighbor, and the love of her children who also loved us and respected us, the love of the community, the love of the teachers,
Mm.
and the principal of the school that respected us so much because of the talents that we had,
Yeah.
and not only did they use it, but they would make sure to tell us, you have a great talent. A lot of people invested themselves in us, and then we in turn return this in singing, in writing, in performing and carrying our concerts throughout Latin America
Wow.
and the world.
Yeah. We are speaking with Oscar Medina. He's an international Christian singer. If anybody wants to learn more about him or his music, his website is www.oscarmedina.com. It's going to be in the bottom of your screen for your reference. And he's available in all digital platforms, all social media platforms. Just type in Oscar Medina and you will find his music, his story, amazing story. I'm your nephew, uncle, and I'm learning a lot from you today. Stuff that you don't know that we go through, that, people that have marked your life. And this is just amazing.
That's
and
right.
You had mentioned about Mexicali, the land that gave you so much. That's where everybody's from. I want to just mention this very briefly. About 4 or 5 years ago, at the end of a family concert that we had there in Mexicali, the local government actually gave you and my uncles, Miguel Patti, Enrique Martin, Gilberto, and yourself, a commendation, an award for being citizens of Mexicali. I mean, I saw my Uncle Gilbert crying, and because that's something, number one, is it was unexpected. Number two, it just demonstrated how much that town, that place of Mexicali appreciated the family of what you've done and where you're at now. And that was such a special moment that I think the family will always remember forever, how Mexicali just embraced you and your ministries. Do you remember that night?
Oh, yeah. And we have pictures there, and
Yeah.
we have pictures there in Facebook too. And it means a lot. It means a lot that somebody recognized. Creo que le dicen regidora. I think
La regidora?
La regidora.
Yeah. It's almost the same as a county supervisor or a mayor, that type of caliber. But it was great.
Yeah. And
okay.
we, to have it be done in front of the rest of the family that's still there in Mexicali, we just felt proud to be Cachanillas.
Cachanilla, that's what they call it. If you're interested to know what Cachanilla means, I'll put a description in the bottom of the screen so you won't be lost in this conversation. But okay, so now to the next section, and we have maybe about 15 more minutes left, and I want to throw in cover two topics here that are important. Number one, I want to discuss your health, Uncle. A few years ago, you were diagnosed with a tumor that I want you to explain a little bit, that pretty much could have ended your life, right? But my question to you is, number one, you had so much love and support from all walks of life that were just behind you, number one. Number two, you could have easily given up and blamed God or blamed whatever, but you didn't. And number three, there was truly a miracle because you went through a physical therapy. You had to recover. You had to go through restoration. You had to get your life back to normal to be able to function, and look at you now, 100%, and God's still using you. I know it's a lot to digest, but why don't you share with us your experience and what God has done for you through that miracle that we all say?
So I was in my first marriage, and my wife then was Nilda. And I want to mention this because we went through it together.
Yeah.
It was 2004. I had been healthy up to that point in my life. I had never had any migraine headaches. I had never gone to the hospital for anything serious. I had never landed in emergency rooms. And I remember I had been suffering pain in my upper shoulders, my upper back. I would get very, what's the word? Inflamado. And then that went on for almost 8 years because of something that happened to me one night, and I was going to do a tumble, and something happened, and from that moment on, I was never the same. That would happen to me every December, every January, in the coldest months of the year. It would always, that pain would always come back. That situation would always come back. And I remember my wife and I were trying to figure it out, and it was always just painkillers and anti-inflammatories, and the kind that make you hallucinate and all of that.
Yeah.
Because the pain was so strong, and so the medication was strong. And I had to go through that for almost 8 years. Eventually, it was 2004. I woke up really early in the morning. It was like 4 in the morning. and I felt like this stabbing, like a needle going through my. I don't mean a needle. I mean like a needle.
Yeah.
Like it was a very, very painful thing. And then I remember waking up and sitting up in bed, and then felt this burning sensation coming down my arms all the way down to my fingers. I literally looked at my hands and arms to see if I was burning. For a moment, I thought it may be a vision, and then immediately realized that it was not. This was real. I woke up, my wife, and I said, "Look, I'm feeling this." And she woke up. She touched me, and she says, "You're sweating," but I didn't have a fever. It was cold sweat. And then she said to me, "Well, just calm down until we can take you to the hospital, to the doctor in the morning." And I had to come down and find a way to just find peace until I could go to the doctor early in the morning. I eventually went to the doctor. The doctor, as soon as he heard what I was going through, as soon as she heard what I was going through, sent me to a neurologist. The next day, I was with a neurologist. He said, "We need to do an MRI." It was around December 13th. And then we did an MRI like 2-3 days after.
Yeah.
And then on the 23rd of December, just as we were about to celebrate Christmas, and we were about to, be with family and, presents and this and that, all of a sudden, there was a call from the doctor, and he says, "I have the results." And he made no mention of me going to the office, of coming into the office for him to give me the results. And I just figured it's good news. And so I started listening to his conversation. And he said, they have found a tumor. And when he said that, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And he says, "We have found a tumor. It's a 3 centimeters by 1 centimeter, 3 centimeters tall by 1 centimeter diameter. It's inside your spinal cord. There's nothing that we can do for you. There's nothing that can be done." And when he said that to me, I really lost it completely. I know he kept talking, and then I eventually hung up. And then I just I remember feeling the floor went out of my feet, under my feet. I remember my hearing was it's like I could hear, but not really. I closed my eyes, and I was kind of lost in the anguish that I was feeling at that time. And I remember calling out to God. I remember feeling like I was screaming, but really I was not. But from within me, I was screaming to God. And I would just say over and over, "Just have mercy on me. Just have mercy on me." And as I'm feeling this anguish and I'm calling to God to have mercy on me, then suddenly there comes a peace in my life. And at that moment, it's that peace that says, the Word of God says, the peace of God that surpasses
all understanding.
All understanding, right?
Yeah.
And then I could understand at that moment that I was going to be okay, that my life was in His hands, and that I would be okay. And then I remember my wife speaking to me words of wisdom, of peace, and of courage. And that helped me out. And from that moment on, we started marching on towards what would eventually become a glorious spiritual adventure. I think I've said many times that David wrote his 23rd Psalm. And we each have to, at some point in our lives, write our own 23rd Psalm. It's a beautiful psalm, but I think when we get to write our own and when we get to experience our own valley of shadow and death, that's where we really come to know how this shepherds our life in the midst of the storm, in the midst of the darkness, in the midst of the greatest danger that comes to our lives. And it becomes a glorious spiritual adventure and eventually a miracle because so many people prayed. And
Absolutely.
Here I am. It was 2005. It's now 2022. 17 years have gone by. The doctor said, there's nothing that can be done for you. But here I am, healthy. All my motor functions are perfectly fine. It was an intramedullary tumor called an ependymoma. It was inside the spinal cord. Even the surgeon that did the surgery said, this is an exploratory surgery.
Wow.
If we can have it removed, we will. And if we can't, all we can do is close you up. Now, going in to look for that tumor meant that they were going to have to do an 8-inch cut in my back, in my cervical. They were going to have to remove 10 bones called the lamina. At that point, they could see the spinal cord. They would have to cut like at least a 4 to 5 centimeter opening in what it's called the midline in the spinal cord. And then they could visualize the tumor. Only at that moment could he decide whether it could be removed or not.
Very invasive surgery.
That's right. But here I am.
Here you are. And from this experience, Uncle, the song Fue Su Poder was born, which was a powerful song. It was his power.
Llegó de la manera que yo menos la esperaba. Mi esposa contestó y en su mirada reflejaba un profundo dolor. Es un tumor, dijo el doctor, un imposible de operar. Y en ese instante pensé, Señor, muy pronto moriré. Y su paz descendió y tomó el control de todas mis emociones. Su espíritu llegó a consolarme y calmar mis emociones. Y muy dentro de mi ser nace un clamor: oh Dios, ten misericordia de mí. Y en ese instante pensé, Señor, en tus manos estoy. Fue su poder que me sanó. Fue su misericordia la que me alcanzó. Fue por su sangre carmesí que derramó allá en la cruz. Fue su bondad, fue su amor, fue su poder.
But you're right. Here you are, a miracle in front of us, because from that also multiple other medical situations and health conditions you've had. But here you are again. You've been able to be victorious. God has made you victorious through these medical trials, medical history, medical situations, conditions, whatever you want to call it. But here you are, and you're still going currently through another situation dealing with your pancreas, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Well, it was a spinal cord tumor in 2005, and then it was the first cancer. It was a 2.9 centimeter tumor in my left kidney. They did a partial nephrectomy. Then came an appendectomy in 2012, and then came the biopsy of the prostate in 2014. That biopsy of the prostate caused me to go into septic shock. They had between 4 to 6 hours or 6 to 7 hours to save my life, or I would have died. They saved my life. And after they saved my life, and I was 4 days and 4 nights in intensive care so that they would kill the bacteria, the E. coli bacteria that was killing me. So here I am on the 5th day, ready to go home. And then the urologist that did the biopsy of the prostate calls me and says, "You have cancer of the prostate." And so that then we had to decide whether we did radiation or surgery. I opted for the radical prostatectomy. They did a radical prostatectomy on me at USC in LA. And then after that, when I thought it was completely over, surely I'm not going to go through anything more, right? Yeah. And then came 2016. They found another tumor in the same left kidney. This one measured 1 centimeter, and so they were able to just remove it, and thankfully still save my left kidney. I still have the two of them, and I thank God for that. And then just as I thought, okay, that's sure it.
That's it, right?
Right? And then they find in 2017 they find a cyst in my pancreas. This is called an intraductal mucinous cyst. Wow. Now, there are two types of cysts. One of them that could become cancer, and one of them that doesn't become cancer. Well, guess which one was the one that I got? The one that could possibly become cancer. And so here we are battling it, and it's not quite it's not a dangerous cancerous tumor yet, but we're having to keep an eye on it, and just ask for prayers, and and continue to pray and walk one step at a time with Jesus, believing and trusting that He has us in His care always.
Well, that is amazing. There's no doubt, Uncle, that God has spared your life, and God has protected you, made you victorious through all these situations for a reason and for a purpose. And from the last segment, the last 5 minutes of this program, I just want to make mention that in the 41 years that you have in your career, your ministry as a singer, songwriter, you've been able to see the waves and the transitions from, the LP, the albums, to cassettes, to CDs. And
it was 8-track. It was an 8-track. 8-track.
Like this, 8-track. So you've been able to ride the waves of all those transitions, and you have peers and colleagues who started off in at the same time you have, who have taken on different paths in life, who have taken on different career paths, who have become pastors or into the ministry. There's some that have remained as singers in their music career. But I will say that you have demonstrated a lot of consistency, a lot of stability. You have kept your faith in this ministry because of your passion, your love for it. And now we're in the digital era where you have been able to capitalize on that and been able to take advantage of that. And there's no doubt that you have reached millions and millions and millions of individuals, Uncle, with your songs, because I've seen the messages that people post on your wall, on your lives, on your platforms or your social media, that they tell you your song saved my life. Your song was there when I was on the verge of suicide. Your song was there for me when I was on the verge of divorce. Or what does that mean to you? What does that mean to you personally, that your song and inspiration from God was able to change somebody's life at the right moment, at the right time?
And so I created a corporation to kind of serve as an umbrella for the ministry. I called it Sembrador Producciones. I gave it a slogan, Sembrando la semilla del amor de Dios con canciones. And then eventually, because of all those testimonies that you're talking about, and I realized that homes were being healed, relationships between husband and wife were being healed, relationships between parents and children were being healed, relationships between brothers and sisters, brothers and brothers, sisters and sisters, mothers and daughters. And then one night, God gives me this slogan for the ministry. Son canciones que sanan las heridas del alma. Wow. They are songs that heal the wounded soul. And I chose to stay with that slogan for good, and it's been my driving force since. That's what I understand. What I understand is that the gospel is a medicine that cures a deadly mortal illness. The songs that God has given us, they have the gospel contained within them. They have that medicine within them. And what we're doing is we're taking this medicine out to the rest of the world, and people who are choosing to take it in and allowing the songs and the message of the songs to come into their lives, the miracle is happening in their lives. Their lives are being healed through the message of each one of the songs. And to me, it's an awesome miracle. Look, Johns Hopkins, where I had surgery, they went into a study to figure out how music can help before surgeries, after surgeries, before any major surgery, and after any major surgery. And they came to find that music and song helps to heal the mind, the heart, and it helps to bring peace. And so they decided that it was a positive thing to use before and after major illnesses and major surgeries. That's what we do throughout the world with these songs. They are songs that heal the wounded soul.
Well, we're speaking with Oscar Medina. He's an international Christian singer, over 10 recordings to his name, over 200 plus songs to his credit. Just an amazing biography, a lot of accomplishments. You know, to learn more about Oscar and his music, his ministry, you can visit www.oscarmedina.com. It's going to be on the bottom of your screen. And you can also look him up in all digital platforms, on all social media platforms. Get to know him, reach out to him. You know, it's been my pleasure, Uncle, to have you on this program.
Thank you so much.
It's always, I'm your nephew, but I'm learning so much from you. You know, the history, our life, what we feel. And I just want to say again, I appreciate the time that you give to be on the show. To me, it's an honor to call you my uncle. I always brag about you to everybody. Everybody knows you're my uncle, and everybody knows. This is the thing, and I said this to you offline. Everybody tells to me, man, your uncle has remained, you know, firm in his ministry. Your uncle has still going strong. Your uncle sounds better now, sings better now than before. I've heard it all, right? So my next question as we end this program is this. You know, we talked about some singers becoming pastors, some singers just dropping off and because they didn't survive. You know, some singers, you know, they couldn't, you know, adapt to this wave of the worship and praise, and it just came in different genres, and some of us call it genre, right? But it's genres. And what helped you? I want to know, Uncle, what helped you?
You did not just do that.
And I'm going to leave it on the show. So, you know, you could have very easily, Uncle, given up. You could have very easily said, like, I can't compete with this new wave of new music, of new movement. I can't compete with whatever, many reasons, but you didn't. It seems that you came back stronger. And it appeared that you wanted to provide even better quality music and recordings by partnering up with Grammy award-winning directors and producers and getting, orchestra from Italy. People don't really realize this, of the effort, the money, and the time put into these recordings. And it looked like you just elevated more and more and more. And it reminds me of what you said earlier. My grandfather, when he may take a step, it was always a step up. It was never a step down. And it seemed that you just, like I said, your social media platform, your presence is making a difference. It's making a huge impact. So I want to ask you this last question before we end this program is, what helped you remain firm, strong, and sustain your ministry in the way it has been, and it's going stronger every day?
To point out, again, some of what I was saying on your previous question, when I realized that my songs, the songs that were given to me, that the songs that were inspired in my life divinely, when I realized that they were changing homes, that they were healing homes, that they were healing. Look, when I went to Nicaragua, for example, I remember seeing the streets flooded with children. That was a long time ago. And that really hurt my heart. It was painful to see so many children without a home.
Yeah.
The whole capital city bombarded and buildings destroyed, and that does something to you. When I went to Guatemala for the first time, and I remember the gentleman that went to pick me up at the airport took me across what they call the basurero municipal. There were families, there were people eating out of the trash that was there in this place. It really touches you. It makes a difference, a huge difference in your life. And so I knew that if I would continue doing what I do, that it would touch people's lives, that it would heal them. That's motivation enough to continue to do this after 41 years, and we'll continue on. I really appreciate the love of the people. I appreciate the way they love my music all throughout Latin America.
I just want to encourage everyone to keep their eyes focused on God and on helping your neighbor. It's really important. Don't look any further than your neighbor if you want to help somebody. The family, the children, the brothers, the sister, your neighbor. They're all there just waiting for you to lend a hand.
There you have it. You've been watching another episode of A Candid Conversation with Adam Lopez with our special guest, Oscar Medina.